Alright folks, welcome to PowerUp Podcast Season 6, Episode 6. I have guests from way up north, at least from me, in Alaska, which is awesome. I've always wanted to talk with fighting game players from Alaska. I just thought it would be so cool. And these gracious gentlemen, we have Mike, is it Magno? Is that how you pronounce it?
Yep.
Alright, Mike Magno, Highlander. And then John, what was your last name?
Kron,
and you go by Lord Dingus. I love that name, so that's awesome. Well, guys, thank you so much for being on the podcast with me tonight. And if you could just take a couple seconds to introduce yourselves. Mike, you go right ahead.
All right, so I'm Mike Magno, aka Highlander. I do the AKG Dojo Declassified podcast. I'm the host of it. John is my co-host. I've hosted many sessions throughout the years, and we had a lot of people go around telling stories, so I eventually figured that we would do that. I also ran a lot of tournaments, and I'm also pretty competitive in Tekken.
Killer. Awesome. And John?
Yeah, my name's John Kron. I'm going by Lord Dingus this week, also known as Critical Impact, Kung Fu Commando. There's a bunch. French Corps.
Nice.
Yeah, it goes Vega Time. It goes on. So whatever they want to call me, I'm good with it, as long as they're paying the bills.
Very good.
Right, absolutely. So yeah, I am one of the mid-range timeline fighting game players up here.
Okay.
I got involved with the community around Street Fighter 4.
Mm-hmm.
Vanilla, I met Mike. He invited me to some of the sessions they were doing, and the rest has kind of been history from there. I bounced around games a little bit. I used to really play a lot of Street Fighter primarily, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
Then I kind of went more to Tekken in recent years.
Oh, okay.
And a little bit of King of Fighters. And other than that, I mostly just compete. I'll help with anything. If they need somebody to do stream commentary, run a bracket, whatever, I'm there. So I'm very about the scene.
Awesome. Well, gentlemen, again, thank you so much for being on the Power Up Podcast with me tonight. And for now, we are going to be starting tonight's news segment. So, one of the questions I have queued up is with the Capcom Pro Tour Online. I know that it filled up super fast, but given Alaska's relative distance from the contiguous U.S., it's probably very difficult for the players to travel, I would assume. Most people would assume. Do online events, is that something that you all have picked up on more in recent years as online events have proliferated? Is that something that's becoming more important to the AK scene? Whoever would like to start. Mike, please go ahead.
Actually, the online events do sometimes become something exciting for us to do.
Mm-hmm.
But we always have something going on in town that, that's kind of a side thing for us, because our internet isn't really that good either, so playing online is a lot tougher.
Okay, yeah, definitely. And then, John, is that a similar experience for yourself?
Yeah, so our internet packages are pretty weak sauce, and we don't have a competition.
Mm-hmm.
So we're lucky if we can watch YouTube. I'm just kidding, it's not that bad. But playing online gets hairy sometimes, especially with people from further away.
Sure.
So yeah, the local scene is really the heart, blood, and soul of the community. We try to keep local events in session rolling. We will do some online stuff, but we try to keep it local where the connection is better.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of it is just trying to hold physical events and invite new players locally, and we'll take whatever we can get.
Come on.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll teach you if you don't know what you're doing,
Nice.
And if you do know what you're doing, great. Come kick our ass. Wonderful. So, or at least try. So,
Yeah, right.
yeah, that's kind of our take on it.
That's a wonderful attitude. I love it. So we'll definitely get into more about the AK community during the community segment, and I really can't wait for that. I'm definitely excited to dive in and talk with you guys more about the organization and the players and everything like that. For now, let's move on to the next question in the news segment. Recently, there was an editorial on Shoryuken.com talking about the Street Fighter V Capcom Pro Tour Championship DLC as being a, quote, step forward for, I guess, fighting games in general is kind of how they meant it, or at least how I interpreted it. And for me, it meant something along the lines of, because Capcom is providing this content and then saying they'll use the money to go toward, grassroots events, that is the big step forward in Capcom's relationship to the grassroots FGC. Did you guys get a chance to read that article, and what did you think about it? John, let's start with you this time.
Yeah, I thought that was pretty interesting. Obviously, Capcom's a business, and the idea is to make a profit. So kind of going out of their way to put money toward an event is indeed very interesting. The only thing I would be kind of concerned about is if they didn't get revenue to actually work on the game for further patches or DLC, because they were dedicating a lot of this. So it'd be kind of interesting to know the breakdown, how much of the DLC price tag is going to the events and how much they're kind of hanging on to for further development. But yeah, I mean, obviously they need to take care of their players, because that's who's taking care of them. So
definitely. And Mike, what's your take?
I'm more curious about how much is actually going to Capcom and then how much is going to the events. I mean, I do love the attitude. We've been trying to grow a tournament here called BLF, and it's kind of our major.
Okay, cool.
I was thinking maybe someday we could see some of that Capcom money, but I don't know.
What do you think, to kind of segue away from news a little bit, but what makes you, where's the trepidation coming from where you don't think Capcom would support BLF?
Oh, I mean, I don't think that that it's big enough yet. Like, if you look at what's on their circuit, those are the majors,
I gotcha.
Yeah, going on is more of a regional. We pull people from all over Alaska, so maybe someday, we're starting to pull people from the outside in, so
that's awesome.
Time. But,
very cool. We were just scratching the surface on all these really cool topics that I can't wait to get to. But first, we have to talk about good old Ed Boon of NetherRealm Studios, and just how big of a troll can Ed Boon possibly be? Is there going to be a Compact Pack 3? Is there not? Is it all just playing with our emotions so that Injustice 2 will all buy it just because we're hyped for the potential for KP3? I don't know. To go away from news a little bit, are there Mortal Kombat XL players in Alaska?
Kind of. Yeah, we have like 3 or 4 guys.
Yeah, 3 or 4,
and they're not really
moderately
serious.
Kind of sort of serious. And then everybody else maybe dabbles a little bit. Not the biggest game up here right now, though. We only have so many people in our community, so it's kind of hard to support all the games.
Well, then, just taking it from a marketing perspective, do you think that Boon's strategy and the way he goes about his marketing on Twitter, is that something that you think is effective? And Mike, let's start with you.
Well, I mean, it's definitely time for social media. It's a really good way for creators and fans to communicate. That way you can tell what the creators, what you want, and hopefully they'll do what you want them to do, and vice versa. They can kind of feel things out and see that if it would be a legitimate project, if it would benefit them. So I think it would really depend on the response as well. Like, if they get good response from what they're putting out, then it might happen.
Yeah, it
Or
seems...
again, this is the guy who made Mortal Kombat, with the guy popping outside of the screen saying "toasty."
Mhm.
So we'll have to take it with a grain of salt.
Yeah, it seems like a love-hate relationship with his Twitter followers. They love when he gives hints, but when those hints actually amount to nothing, they get mad, but they're still hanging on for more hints. So, there you go. And then, John, what do you think of Ed Boon's Twitter marketing sort of semi-viral strategy?
You youngster whippersnappers in your Twitters. Uh, yeah, I really don't know. I know viral marketing from a marketing perspective is very effective, especially if you can kind of get those specific earworms or the memes that just keep like populating everybody's consciousness. And Ed Boon is kind of trolly. You can look at the kind of the lore and just the way the games have developed over the years,
Yeah.
like storyline wise and kind of character and plot and the way some of the people have been characterized throughout the course of the games. If anybody's going to be able to make that work, it's probably him. Maybe Harada from Tekken. Definitely, he knows what he's doing. I'm sure he'll figure it out.
Yeah, I think so. So let's shift to the last question in the news segment, actually, because I really would like to start hearing more about Dojo Declassified. So, Mike, could you give us some tidbits, upcoming guests, any sort of news about Dojo Declassified that the listeners who are going to want to check it out should know?
Well, they definitely have to watch or listen to the last episode with Ori Watts.
There you go.
It was a really awesome episode. We have a friend of ours who actually moved away a few years ago, and we're going to be doing a podcast through Skype. We'll have Grandmaster B.
Nice.
Really, really good player. He was actually, I think James Chen or another popular commentator called him the number 3 E Honda online for Street Fighter 4.
Nice. That's awesome. Very cool. And then you talked about BLF a little bit. What does that acronym stand for?
I think it's Battle for the Last Frontier.
Oh, that's a cool name. Very nice. So,
Yeah.
do you guys run that earlier in the year, later in the year? What's the game plan?
It's actually our friend who runs it,
Oh, okay.
Kitchpanich, and he basically just tries to gather up people from the community to help him out. But he's the man with the plan. He makes everything happen here.
And on that note, be sure to check out our episode featuring Bombi Kitchpanich from a couple weeks ago.
There you go. Nice. So is there a BLF on the horizon for this year, or folks going to have to wait until 2017?
Yeah, it'll probably be 2017 because
That's
we
okay.
just picked up the second one.
Mhm.
And it's meant to be a yearly event because it's tough to put together.
Yeah, I mean, I've run events in the past, ran a few regionals and then smaller local events, and it can be very hard. It's ironically, for me anyways, it was harder to run the smaller events because people were less interested in helping without there being a bigger spotlight on the event. So that was my personal experience with running events and trying to get volunteers. So yeah, I definitely understand that it can be difficult. So we're going to move on to the strategy segment next. We're going to be talking about favorite games, some other things, other topics. So listeners, stay tuned and let's start the music. Alright, so John, KOF 14's coming out, and you stated that that's a game and a series that you enjoy. So what makes you like KOF 14, and is it going to overshadow your Tekken training, since that's kind of your main game from what I was hearing?
Yeah, probably not. And that has a lot to do with our community. So when 13 dropped, we have a syndrome here in Alaska called Game of the Week syndrome. And everybody played it for a good month. After that, there was only a handful of us. And me and Mike were actually in the lab a lot. And so we were training that game and getting our combos, punishes, matchup information. We were getting that all straightened out. And then it kind of slowed down with everybody from there. It got to be harder to get enough people in a tournament scenario to really justify it. So it kind of fell by the wayside. I'm like, I remember my bread and butters, but everybody's playing Tekken and Street Fighter and Marvel, so we'll go do that.
Gotcha. Of those 3 games, which one is the biggest in the AK scene? Is it Tekken?
In AK, it's definitely Street Fighter.
Okay.
Marvel has had a bit of a resurgence, but I think our second biggest game, and it's really kind of getting to the point where it might be the biggest soon, it's actually Smash.
Ah, yeah.
A lot of people play Melee up here. Some people are fond enough of 4 to play it occasionally. Some people even really like Project M. But man, this town is big on. So yeah, there's a lot of that.
Very cool. I go to the last frontier, you still can't escape Smash, but so it goes. Very nice. So John, let's stick with you for a little bit longer. When it comes to Tekken and your favorite games in general, we know that online play can be difficult for you folks, and it's also difficult to get players from outside of Alaska to come to Alaska events. So how do you go about training and improving? Does where you live impact how you're training?
Yeah, totally. I mean, you have some small group of people that you play with consistently, and that's good, but you don't get the exposure to a lot of different fighting game philosophies and people's different approaches to the game. So I feel like if you're in an environment like this, you might be a little bit more of a lab technician. You might spend more time maximizing all the damage, checking out your punishes, making sure you kind of have all that stuff down and worked into your muscle memory. And then you can kind of bring that to a local, and you may only use half of what you've practiced because there's only 3 other people, 4 other people, 5 other people. Maybe you have an 8. That's cool if we can do that. And they're all using like a handful of the characters, you know. So I feel like to dig deep and get that experience, braving a little bit of our bad online is necessary. Or I always tell people from up here, travel, go to the events, go to your EVOs, go to your final rounds. Make sure you're seeing the fighting game world, rather.
Absolutely, absolutely. And then Mike, sort of same question to you. Tekken, obviously, one of your favorites. And how do you approach training?
Well, yeah, even though I don't like online, I was actually #1 online for the Mishimas in Tekken Tag 2 on Xbox. For a little while anyway. I ended up getting an injury, but definitely training for events is extremely difficult. I'm very fortunate to have found somebody that I could really train with. I have this training partner who plays the whole cast.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, before an Evo, he'll run me through the whole cast and see what I know and what I don't know, and then help me out that way. But definitely playing online also helped me out because the mindsets are different. Like, you know, somebody will play Jin Kazama way differently than what your buddy will play.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you need to be ready for off-the-wall stuff. So playing online is somewhat viable in that sense that you'll be able to see things that you wouldn't see from your local scene. But for the most part, like, actual competition online is really, really difficult. So it's more training ground than anything.
Gotcha. So you both mentioned Evo, and then John, you mentioned Final Round. When it comes to traveling, I've seen Evo tips and tricks about save here, spend there, to try to make the trips more affordable. Is it really expensive to fly out from Alaska to Vegas?
I'll take the right away on that one. No, I don't really think so. It's a good couple $100 for a round trip ticket, like 300-400, depending on when you book. If you get it early and you get a good airline service, you can do it pretty affordably. I think the real challenge is staying in Vegas for any amount of time because that place will drain your money. So, the hotel arrangements, that's a huge chunk of change. Food, maybe transportation, just kind of the bare necessities. And so my advice to everybody that was considering traveling to any tournament anywhere, work those logistics out harder than the plane ticket itself, because that's easy. That's easily done. But make sure if you're going to go to a hotel, do you have roommates? Does everybody have it booked? Is it prepaid? What's the situation? And then make sure you've got enough to feed you, emergency, rainy day, you never know. So, yeah, I think that's where the trick comes in budgeting-wise.
Gotcha. Mike, do you have any kind of budgeting tips and tricks for players who aspire to travel around the world, at least the United States, but perhaps the world?
Get a job.
Get a job. I like it. Yes, very good. Get a job where you have weekends off.
Yeah, get the right days off. Usually when I travel, I get to know what my schedule is for my travel arrangements in January. And usually EVO happens in July or August, so I usually have 7 months to prepare for it. Like John was saying, bring extra money because you don't know what's going to happen. And I advise people to hide their money. Don't keep it in your wallet. Don't have everything on you. Make copies of your IDs, credit cards, and all of that, just in case you lose them. You're going to want a secret file. Usually, hotels usually have a safe, so if there's anything that's super important that you have with you, make use of that. It's usually free.
That's a pro tip I have never heard, actually utilizing a hotel safe and then also copying your cards just in case something, or your ID just in case something bad happens. That's a really cool tip. I like that very much. So let's talk a little bit, we kind of talked about online play already, so let's talk about Dojo Declassified. You guys aren't too many episodes in, but have you sort of developed a strategy for who you're picking as guests, or is it more sort of a off-the-cuff thing? Mike, let's go with you.
Well, basically, when the idea started, I actually wrote up an order and a guest list. I have 31 episodes lined up.
Nice.
But the thing is, no plan survives the battlefield.
Yeah.
Had to alter the list. I've actually added a few people in. So far I'm going to be ending up with like 36. But the order is all messed up. Basically, there isn't a real strategy. I just have that many people lined up. That way I can get somebody on whenever I have the time to do one. And then ask a bunch of people if they want to do one that week. But currently I'm trying to do sort of a theme where I start with Street Fighter. Then eventually I want to talk about Marvel and Tekken as well, since those scenes have had such a rich history up here. But yeah, besides that, just whoever's available.
Nice. Well, that's an excellent segue into the community segment, so let's go ahead and start the music. Alright, so Mike, you were talking rich history for Tekken, Street Fighter, Marvel even. So tell me more about the Alaska scene in general, the who, where, what, why, when. Where exactly are you guys at in Alaska, to make it clear for the listeners?
So we're in Anchorage, Alaska, but our community actually spans from Anchorage to Juneau to Fairbanks, pretty much anywhere in Alaska. As long as you're in Alaska, you can be part of the group. We do online events and stuff for that too.
To give us a sense of scale, people are familiar with California and how it can be a good 5-6 hours from tip to tip. So in those 3 cities that you mentioned, if you were to go from one all the way to the farthest other, what's the time frame for driving for that trip?
It takes 8 hours or 6 hours, depending on who's driving, to get to Fairbanks, and then I think you have to fly to Juneau. I don't think you can actually drive there.
Oh, wow.
Nope. Yeah. It's ice roads and mountains with no pavement before that. So the only way to get there is by plane or ferry. Some people can boat.
Nice.
So, yeah, it's really spread out. Alaska is huge, really huge. So, like Mike was mentioning, Fairbanks is 6 to 8 hours away. It took me about 7 when I was visiting one of our Tekken playing friends when he was living there. And, it can make getting our players in town and all together for some events kind of hectic sometimes. But overall, we've been pretty good about it. We have a couple of warriors out there in Wasilla, which is only about like an hour away.
30 minutes.
Yeah. Well,
depending on who's driving.
Yeah, depending on who's driving and the weather, and always expect a traffic jam because somebody hit a moose.
Oh, wow.
Every time. The highway will be backed up. So, yeah, there's a lot of uniquely Alaskan challenges to getting everybody together, the weather being one of them, yeah.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like you guys have a pretty healthy sort of connection between the sort of different scenes. It seems from the way you're describing it that it's not isolated scenes. Like in Ohio, where I live, the scenes, Cleveland, Columbus, and Cincinnati, are fairly isolated from each other. People talk, right? But they each have their own unique tournaments and things like that. But from the way you guys are describing Alaska, it seems like players are more willing to ping pong around to those 3 major cities in the scene. Does that seem true? Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, I think so, and I think a lot of that might have to do with kind of like a general Alaskan mentality. We typically like help each other out a lot. Not even the fighting community, just Alaskans. So obviously, I mentioned the weather. If somebody's their car broke down on the side of the road, and they need a jump or a tire change, and they don't know how to do it, I don't know why they wouldn't. But if somebody can stop and help them, they'll usually will very quickly. So I think that has a lot to do with it, the togetherness of the Alaskan culture in general, because it's really us versus nature a lot. And
online.
And online.
And versus online, yeah.
We have to keep it together. And that kind of just naturally branches over into the fighting game community, I think.
Yeah. That's an excellent point. I really like that. Mike, what do you have to say about the unique challenges of organizing the FGC in Alaska?
Well, actually, usually it's not really that difficult.
Okay.
All I have to do is cook something in my kitchen, tell everybody something, and they all come over.
There you go.
Yeah, that's actually how we started things. Like 2 or 3 of us had an idea to do sessions, and one of my friends, Cholor, had a place, so we used his place, and we used my meat as bait. We basically grew the community from there, and our consistent events, like the guy that I mentioned earlier, Bombi, we have monthlies. Sometimes we have weeklies. And then on top of that, we always have sessions going on. So whenever there's somebody coming from out of town, they usually just post on AKG, and then usually people will be happy to host them, maybe even have them over for a few days.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah, like some people will actually drive out of town to Wasilla, like John was saying, and pull up from there and then take them home the next day. So we usually try to involve everybody in everything. We're an extremely open community, and usually that's how it kind of spreads out. So like this started in Anchorage, then we made friends in Juneau, and then Fairbanks, and
Catch a Can.
Yeah, Catch a Can. And basically, they've kind of adapted the same thing too. So if we ever go visit them, expect the same hospitality from them.
That's awesome. Very cool. Well, I'm really happy to hear that the community is so together up there. And John, you said something interesting about it being an Alaskan mentality. And, I, not being from Alaska, I hadn't really thought of it that way, but that's a very interesting point that you made about that being just the kind of the way you folks are. And I think that's really cool. So I know that there is an AK Gamers website. It hasn't been updated in maybe about a month and a half. But yeah, who maintains the website? Do you guys know?
Bombi does.
Okay, all right.
So he's the one-man army, so
yeah.
He does things. He wears all the hats in AKG. He's also one of the best players.
Very nice. So is there a monthly coming up soon? Any plans? Any gatherings?
Actually, this Saturday we're hosting a Scrub Cup for 2. It's going to be a pair play, and none of the better players, the killers, none of them are allowed to join the bracket. So, and the first prize is actually going to be 2 pieces of steak. So whoever wins really wins.
Man, that meat bait, you're serious about that. That's awesome.
Yeah, I'm not messing around.
You'll just have to try it. It's really good.
Oh boy. All right. Well, my wife has always wanted to travel to Alaska, so it sounds like I'm going to have to come to a BLF sometime in the future. That definitely will happen.
Yeah, bro. That would be awesome.
Awesome. So let's see here. So with Dojo Declassified, what is your goal with Dojo Declassified? Are you trying to enrich your scene? Are you trying to get Alaska's FGC sort of out there for people to see? While you were formulating it, what are your guys' goals for Dojo Declassified? Which is an awesome name, by the way. I wish I had thought of that.
John came up with that name.
Nice. Well done, sir.
So,
thank you.
Well, basically, the idea has actually been brewing around my mind since 2009. I got into Street Fighter 4 and I ran into a video game podcast, and I had listened to a lot of different podcasts before that, but I never even thought about a fighting game specific podcast. So it's been an idea that I've been kicking around for a while, and eventually I met John. We've actually known each other for like 5 or 6 years now. But it wasn't until recently that, I wanted to basically share our history, with anybody who's willing to listen, really. It's mainly geared towards the people that are up here. But, we wouldn't mind anybody listening to it. I mean, we have lots of fun doing it. And we do try to talk about certain things that's happening in the community, like maybe cover gaps in mindsets between the top players that we have, because most of the time when I'm talking to people here, they're usually really good at the games that they play, but we're also going to have people here who are just starting or kind of middle of the road. And just try to, paint the picture of how the scene is and how the scene was before for, the people who are here now that are just starting with Street Fighter 5 or, future generations to come. Hopefully we'll be having AKG till we're all dead and buried. Nice.
I love always thinking of the long game, for sure. John, do you have anything you'd like to add?
No, that was pretty much it. It's Mike's baby for the most part. I just am kind of his muse. I come up with the last minute ideas or the improvisations. He's really the brains of the operation, though, and I'm just happy to be along for the ride. I am happy to interact with everybody in our scene. We have a very diverse and varied community. And I don't always get to see them. Some of them exclusively play games that I don't really dabble in. So it's a good opportunity for me to kind of touch base with everyone again. And It's almost like a reunion sometimes. I haven't seen some of these guys for a minute, so we just try to have fun and have a good time. And if people want to join us and learn about our little scene up here while we reflect on it and reminisce, then more the merrier.
That is awesome, and I will certainly do what I can because I think it's great what you guys are doing, and I would definitely like to continue promoting it. I mean, that's why I wanted you on the podcast for sure. So that's awesome. All right, so gentlemen, I don't know if I made it clear in my communications with you, but there is an activity segment to the podcast. So what we're going to be doing now is we'll very shortly start the game segment music, but you'll be working together you'll actually be competing against each other in today's game activity. So I will explain more to you after we play the music. Alright guys, so today's activity is going to be one of the fact or fiction activities. In this FGC related news item or sort of trivia fact, is it true or is it false? Am I telling you the truth or am I intentionally trying to trick you? I'll say right now I will never try to trick you, but I could be lying, so I don't know. Anyways, so since this podcast is with two guests, which is awesome, you guys will be answering together, but at the same time. And then out of 5 questions, the guest with the best record overall will win. And I always love ties because then everyone wins, but we'll see. I don't know. I'm hoping someone beats the other so that way you guys can fight to the death once the podcast is over. But anyways, are you gentlemen prepared? So what we'll do is I'll read the question, I'll ask true or false, and then I'll say ready, and then kind of 3, 2, 1, or just ready, go, and then you guys shout it out, and then I'll try to discern who said what, and I will keep score as we go along, right after I get a piece of paper. Alright. Yes. This should be an entertaining game segment. I haven't done one where the guests have been against each other yet, so that'll be interesting. Anyways. Let's go, Mike and John. All right. So, gentlemen, are we ready?
All right, we're ready.
Excellent.
Ready.
So, for question number 1. The Smash Brothers for Wii U player Zero's claim to fame as the best player on the planet came about primarily due to his tournament win streak. But just how large was it? Zero's streak was 73 tournaments before he was defeated by Nairo at MLG World Finals in 2015. So the essential true-false is Zero's streak, or was it, actually 73 tournaments before he was defeated by Nairo at MLG World Finals 2015? So think about it for a second, and then we'll do the Smash Brothers for Wii U.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Mm-hmm. So I'll do ready, go, and then we'll have you both say your answers at the same time. So, ready, go.
False.
Fiction.
Okay, so you both say false. You are both correct. So very good. We'll play the correct music. It was just 55 tournaments. So you guys are currently tied 1 point apiece. Well done. All right, so question number 2. Before EVO, the Evolution Championship Series we all know and love, became EVO, it went by another name. Way back in the 90s. The predecessor to the Evolution World Championship was a tournament called Rumble by the Wharf. True or false? Think about it for a sec. Ready? Go.
False.
You both say false. You are both correct again. Yes, it was Battle by the Bay.
Yep.
Man, my questions just aren't on point tonight, I tell you. I make them too hard one episode, and then I make them too easy. Or maybe you just guys are just awesome. Who knows? I don't know. Anyways, congratulations. 2 points for each of you. Are we going to end this in a tie? I mean, now it's going to get crazy because one of these questions is a doozy. So, there's no way you could know it. Or maybe you still will. I don't know. All right. There's a lot of Smash questions in this, unfortunately. That's because there's so much cool stuff. There's such a huge competition. It is hugely popular. Question number 3. It is Smash Brothers for Wii U is huge. It's huge. So this we know. Now, the esports that we know and love for Smash Brothers, it's turned into real sports. Because now Smash Brothers for Wii U is being included at the 2016 Summer Olympic Games in Rio de Janeiro. True or false? Is Smash truly at the Summer Olympics this year? That would be crazy. So think about it for a second. Ready? Go.
False.
So you both say false?
Yeah.
You're both incorrect this time. It's actually true. Yeah. So I just recently read about this. It's something called E-Games, and they're actually also hosting a Smite tournament, the MOBA Smite, and Smash Brothers for Wii U is going to have international participation for no prize money, mind you, but just for national pride. And it is going to be at the Rio de Janeiro 2016 Summer Olympic Games in the E-Games category. So how crazy is that? Well, you're still tied.
Not on TV.
Yeah, I know, right? They will be streaming it with commentary. Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So it's still just esports.
Yeah,
Esports.
right.
But that's pretty cool, man.
It is, definitely. Okay, so 2 questions left. 2 chances to either tie or for one to be victorious. So question 4. This is going to be the tough one. Around 4 years ago, at the UFGT Tournament Series in Chicago, Illinois, main organizer Keats, currently of Iron Galaxy, the developer of Killer Instinct, had a game room. Not fighting games, but card games, mini games, things of that nature for his guests where they could play these minigames related to the fighting game community. Things like Street Fighter 21, and then of course the ever so wonderful Balrog Ball. So one of these games, this is the essential true-false portion, one of these games was a pinball-esque game called Balrog Ball, where the ball would fall into slots and the player would then score points based on where the ball fell. And then you would pay to put the ball back into the shooter lane, roll it up, and it would come back down. And you could do that a few times, and then whatever your aggregate score was, you received a prize from a small prize pool, like a little stuffed animal or something like that. So, was there truly a game called Balrog Ball at the UFGT Tournament Series in Chicago, Illinois? This strange pinball-esque game, pachinko meets pinball, old school. So think about it for a second. Ready? Go.
Fact.
So you both say it's true?
Yeah.
You are both correct. Very good. Now, did you guys know that?
No, but I've met Keats, and he's really an interesting person.
Yeah, I know he does stick work and stuff, so putting together a pinball / pachinko machine would be no sweat. So
Yeah, I actually played Balrog Ball those years ago at UFGT 9, I think 9 or 10, and it was actually a lot of fun. I don't know if you guys, have you ever watched Price is Right?
yeah.
So Plinko, it reminded me a lot of Plinko, which is always the most hype game on the Price is Right. Absolutely. Yeah. Plinko's the best. So when I'm old and decrepit, one of my things will be, I'm just gonna go buy a Plinko board. Like, I'm just gonna spend $10,000 and buy a Plinko board. I don't know.
Plinko champ.
Plinko champ. Oh man, there's a tournament for you. Plinko. Talk about luck of the draw. All right. So, all right, guys. Last question. Are you going to be in lockstep one more time for the complete tie, or will your answers diverge? We're about to find out. Question 5. Top Super Smash Bros. For Wii U player Anti recently defeated Street Fighter V player Low Tier God in Street Fighter V. After Low Tier God issued a public challenge on, of course, Twitter to any and all Smash Bros. Players, claiming none of y'all are good enough to beat me in Street Fighter V, no matter who you are. So is that true? Did Low Tier God actually call out the entire Smash Brothers community, and then one of their top players from the Wii U community beat him in the set? Did that really happen? True or false? Think about it for a second. Ready? Go.
Fact.
So you both say true?
Yeah.
Well, you tied anyways, but you got it right, so we'll play the music. And since you did so well, I'm going to play the victory music.
Yes! That's what I mean. Like,
Yep.
Absolutely. I have yet to have to play the dreaded defeat music. I'm actually now dreading the day because that guest's going to be really disappointed.
face. Gets to be the first, though.
Yeah, that's true. They get to be the first person who gets defeated. And I worked hard on that music, too. But
Right.
anyways. All right. Well, gentlemen, congratulations. You did very well on today's guest activity quiz. So hopefully you had some fun with that. Was it enjoyable for you guys?
Absolutely.
Yep.
Great. That's good to hear. Hopefully all you listeners out there have played along. And now we are going to be doing the listener challenge segment. So if you weren't paying attention during the guest game, listeners, I hope you pay attention now, because this is going to be your second in the month of August, your second riddle/poem that you need to send me an answer for. Remember, when it comes to the listener challenge segment, send me correct answers to both the Season 6 Episode 5 and now the Season 6 Episode 6 riddles/poems, questions, whatever I decide to do. Send 2 correct answers, 1 for each episode, to PowerUpFighters@gmail.com. And you, if you send me correct answers, will be entered to win a prize for the month of August. Now, gentlemen, please don't shout out any answers on this one, but you are welcome to play and send me answers if you would like. You'll just have to go back and listen to Season 6, Episode 5 with BXA Jade and BXA Phoenix of Broken Alliance Gaming based in Florida. So, today, for Season 6, Episode 6, it is a riddle. It's a name that game. So I will say the riddle, and then the final line will be, what game am I? For all you astute listeners out there, your job, of course, will be to try to discern what the hell I'm talking about in my weirdly worded riddle. And hopefully you will be able to tease out my tiny clues and send a correct answer for the fighting game title, and there are plenty throughout history, and I've chosen just one, to get it right in today's riddle. So, let us begin. Today's Name That Game, Season 6, Episode 6. I prefer diesel to unleaded, so I have 2 diesels for you to play. One diesel is always around, but the other is sometimes not. One of these diesels is more like Tupac Shakur than Optimus Prime. What game am I? So one more time. I prefer diesel to unleaded, so I have 2 diesels for you to play. One diesel is always around, but the other is sometimes not. One of these diesels is more like Tupac Shakur than Optimus Prime. What game am I? So, gentlemen, without giving anything away, do you have any inclination as to what fighting game title I might be talking about?
Actually, for some weird reason, I think I do.
Whoa, very cool. Well, if you want to go back to Season 6, Episode 5, or, folks, at this point, I would like just some answers. If you can send me an answer, correct answer to just one of the Listener Challenge segment questions, then I'll enter you into August's drawing. So, send me incorrect answers, and I'll still send you a heart back just because I love that you tried to participate. So, thank you very much for listening, all you listeners out there. Hopefully you will do your research and figure out my obnoxious riddle. I certainly hope so. So, gentlemen, thank you so much for being on the Power Up podcast. Mike Highlander and John Lord Dingus, a.k.a. many of those other names, which one of them was actually really awesome, but I forget.
They're all awesome, bro.
They're all awesome, so very good. So guys, let's go ahead, and if you have any final plugs or shout-outs you'd like to give, now's the time. So let's go with John first.
yeah, check out our podcast, Dojo Declassified, which we have a Facebook page for. Check it out, get on that, and keep abreast of when our next episode is. Mike, do you know what that is off the top of your head?
It's actually going to be this Sunday.
This Sunday, coming to you soon. Also, I would like to thank our gracious host for having us. You're already listening to this, so you already know you should check him out, but do that again anyways. Recommend him to a friend.
Yes.
Thank you very much. All relevant links for anything AKG or Dojo Declassified will be in the description of this podcast on YouTube, so folks, check that out and go check these guys out.
Awesome. Banana sauce.
Banana sauce.
Yeah, I know. That's such a... Oh, man, guys. So, Mike, any shout-outs or anything that you'd like to say to kind of send us off?
I would just like to shout out everybody in the AKG community. Anybody who's listening to this, and you for having us over, man. It's been awesome. This is really fun. Hopefully, someday we'll get to have you in our podcast.
That would be killer.
Yeah. So people watch out for that someday.
All right. Well, guys, thank you so much for being with me, your host, Nathan Shields, on the Power Up Podcast. Folks, thanks for listening, and I hope you have a great day. We'll catch you later. Bye.